please take roll call?
President Christine Melendez,
Here.
Vice President Ken Bennett,
Here.
and we're going to call the Town Board regular meeting and last meeting of the year to order for December 9th, 2019. Ms. Iker, will you please take roll call?
Mayor Christy Melendez,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ken Bennett,
Here.
Miles Baker, Barry Wilson,
Here.
Paul Brennemeyer,
Here.
Tom Jones,
Here.
David Soslowski.
Here.
Mr. Wilson, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item is review of agenda by the board and addition of items of new business to the agenda for consideration.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as presented this evening.
Second.
Motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer with a second from Mr. Jones, approving the agenda as presented. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. The agenda is approved unanimously as presented. Moving on to board liaison reports. Town Board Member Wilson, Parks, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Board, Hooter River Trail Corridor.
Madam Mayor, thank you. We have no significant updates this week.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Bennett, Water and Sewer Board.
The Water and Sewer Board met on November 13th. They reviewed data from the recent water rate study, and that's one of the items on our agenda tonight. Also, they've been working on and planning a citizens outreach program. They're looking at working with the Weld County Extension Office to have a homeowners boot camp, probably sometime in February or March. It'll be one night a week for 3 weeks. The emphasis is to help particularly new homeowners or those of us who may be changing our landscaping to know how to do landscaping as well as household water use more efficiently. And that's it.
Okay. Town Board Member Rennemeyer, Chamber of Commerce.
I have just a quick update since our last meeting. I have a couple new businesses that have become members of the Chamber. Subway, Dickey's Barbecue, and CPP Wind all have joined within the last couple months since I gave the last report. But the Chamber is actually having their monthly board meeting this Wednesday. I'll have more to provide, I guess. It won't be till January as to what we cover in that board meeting. So that concludes my report.
Town Board Member Jones, Windsor Housing Authority, Great Western Trail Authority.
Yes, Madam Mayor. The Housing Authority will be having its next regular meeting in 2 weeks. And the Great Western Trail did not have a regular meeting in December. So next update on both of those will be January.
Okay. Town Board Member Soslowski, Clearview Library Board and Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. The Library Board, due to the holiday, normally would meet the last Thursday of the month, but being the day after Christmas, we'll be meeting this coming Thursday, the 12th at 5:30 at the library, if anyone is open to the public. The Planning Commission did meet on Wednesday. The primary issue they addressed was referred to us this evening for hearing, so I remind you that I will need to read my disclosure when the public hearing opens.
Okay. I have Downtown Development Authority and North Front Range MPO. Downtown Development Authority met on November 20th. This evening in our packet, we're going to be looking at and approving their budget, so I won't go into detail then. I see that our director's here and he'll talk about that. We also, as you saw in a memo that went out, that we have put in a grant to DOLA for the alley improvement ways that we plan to move forward with. And on Saturday, December 7th, they kicked off Elf on the Shelf Hunt. And just as a reminder, that is extending this year, not just to through Windsor Wonderland, but that is every Saturday now until the 21st. There will be winners picked. So go downtown, pick up an application, visit some stores, and then drop your entry off at Toast. And you could be a winner of a $100 gift certificate to any of the participating businesses in downtown Windsor. MPO, did meet on December 5th here in Windsor. Windsor was host to the MPO here last week, so a couple of items on that agenda that evening. We did see an update from the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail Commission. There are 4 items right now being considered. There's a public rail authority, a Front Range Rail District, a rail enterprise, or an Expand Southwest Chief Front Range Rail Commission, all being considered right now. The only one the MPO agreed for the representative to take to the board and to be in agreement with was the Public Rail Authority, which would establish a statutory tool for local entities to create an authority over time as planning and funding options arise. We also took a look at the budget. So the North Front Range total budget stands at $1.45 million, while the Vango budget is around $1.1 million. We did discuss the 10-year strategic pipeline of projects that we need to produce and put in for the state. We're going to break these down by the 6 significant corridors: I-25, US 34, 85, 287, State Highway 14, and 392, and any projects that align with those. Right now, there are about 57 projects on our list. So we were to have a meeting this coming Friday, that due to the commissioner on the board not realizing we had that on the agenda, we are making that switch. But we will be meeting about that at an off-site meeting, not at MPO, sometime in January. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those 57 projects and we're going to prioritize them. We also learned at the MPO meeting about a new and one-time funding pot of money that came out of the state. It's called the Multimodal Options Fund. There is $5.6 million that are going to be available for projects. And so that got released. The dates are coming soon to turn in applications for that. So I've already armed our town manager with that application form. I think Windsor probably has a couple of projects that we could put in for that. I do know the MPO is going to be looking for funding for their new One Call, One Click program, because over the next 3 years, as they bring that project to life, it will take about $1.1 million in funding. They are going to seek $600 million from this multimodal pot of money, and then they will match it with, not $6 million. Did I say $6 million? I meant $600,000. They're going to take $600,000, make that request, and match it with $600,000 from the Vango funding right now, so that One Call, One Click can become a reality. And for those of you who don't know what One Call, One Click is, that is a program that we're trying to put together as a one-stop shop that would help primarily seniors, those folks that are perhaps seniors, disabled, and our veterans who have need of being able to need transit or need ways to get around, and instead of them having to figure out all the different sources, what it would be exactly that. One call, you would call and let them know what your itinerary is for the day, and they would figure out all of the different and connect you to all of the different venues available so that you have a much easier way of being able to do what is needed to be done out there. So we're looking forward to bringing One Call, One Click to life. And one final item of discussion was we did approve a change in our CMAQ award funding. There was some money that was going to be going to Larimer County that has been transferred to the city of Loveland for a CNG charging facility. And due to the Larimer County's leadership and generosity in transferring that money to Loveland, it's going to total over $800,000. It will allow Loveland to have a bigger and better fleet management and fueling station facility, and then Larimer County is going to be able to continue to have use of that facility for the years to come. So that was, I think, a good thing that showed how two folks could come together make something work and make it work bigger and better than what was originally anticipated. So, other than that, I think that concludes my reports for both of those. So, moving on is our item 5 would be in public invited to be heard. This is for individuals wishing to participate on a non-agenda item. And this evening we have J.D. Rogel. So if you step up front, state your name and address, and we'll start the timer and you will have your 3 minutes.
JD Roybal, vale en español, pero it's Roybal, 224 North 6th, Windsor, Colorado. And Tom, I'd like to make a comment. I'm glad to see you're still on the trail, because remember you did the trail around the lake, and I'd like to mention how it's evolving into something I think is tremendous. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is a continuation. I just wanted to mention with the large number of people that showed up for the air quality effort that we're trying to do here in the town. It was really amazing about that storm to see how many people showed up. And there was a question that you mentioned about how the number of wells that were shown. And so what I have here is this is the diagram. One's from 2012, the other one's from 1999. And I just wanted you to see the variations from it. And that'll kind of give you an idea, number of wells, and right now there's about 20,500 and some odd wells. And I just thought, again, there's just a whole lot of horizontal network that we're dealing with, so I just wanted to say, just to bring that up, because you did ask about how many wells there were when you mentioned those red dots. So again, thank you. Again, thanks.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak during this time? This would be the time to come forward. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item B, the consent calendar. This evening, we have 8 items under the consent calendar.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the consent calendar as presented this evening.
Second.
Motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer with a second from Mayor Pro Tem to approve the consent calendar as presented. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the consent calendar is approved unanimously as presented. Moving on then to formal board action, item C. Our first item this evening is resolution number 2019-96. A resolution approving an agreement with Safe Built Colorado LLC for building inspection services provided to the town of Windsor. Legislative action, and Mr. Bolstad's giving presentation. Mr. Bolstad.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Town Board. This item is a renewal of the existing Safe Built contract with just a few minor amendments to the Exhibit A3, which deals with inspection timeframes. Normally, we would just administratively renew the agreement if there were no changes from the previous, but this does provide a few minor changes to inspection calls for inspections, the AM, PM request option, and an option for the applicant to call Safe Built for an estimated time of arrival option. These are all in reaction to the current volume of inspection calls that Safe Built gets, and to try and more efficiently utilize the inspector's time so that they can get to the site and do a thorough inspection and complete the rest of their inspections in a timely manner. So the enclosed resolution and amendment to the IGA have been drafted and reviewed with Safe Built, and staff is recommending approval of those, approval of the resolution. And I do have a Safe Built representative here if there are any questions regarding the specifics of the inspections.
Okay. Did the Safe Built representative want to say anything before we?
No, I'm really gonna need, it's just Russ Weber.
Well, come forward so everybody can hear you at home, Russ.
Russ Weber with Safe Built, Operations Manager. Really why we're doing this is we're finding a lot of, with our current 7:30 a.m. cutoff time, we get builders that call in 30 inspections at 7:28, and they want all PM inspections because they want to try to hurry and get them fixed. And it's causing not a very good service to all the citizens here. So we're trying to streamline that process and be consistent with a lot of other buildings, departments across northern Colorado. Change that to 4 o'clock.
Okay.
We still will honor, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, we
Okay.
still will honor homeowners. If they call us, we'll give them a pretty accurate time of what time we're going to be there.
Okay. Are there questions for Mr. Volstead or Mr. Weber? My only question was, when I saw in the packet, so we retain that 20% off the top. Is that covering the current, is that enough to currently still cover the costs for Windsor?
That was actually part of the amendment that we did last year. We actually changed that percentage from, I believe it was 10% to 20%. So we did just address that in the last update last year.
Well, it would have been 2 years ago. It was in before I started, Scott. So I think it would have been in.
Okay, so,
It would have been in 2017, probably.
17 it could have been.
okay, so yeah, yes, I guess last year's amendment was more to address the additional staffing that they were gonna help with. So yeah, I haven't done a calculation to see what the latest 20%, how that compares to our building permit technician and building services. I'd have
We
to,
just might want to look at that,
Sure.
just because I know that we've had a record-breaking year
Right.
For permitting for everybody around, and so we just want to make sure that that number, whatever it is a value, I mean, it's equating a fair value back to what we're having to do on our part to see if maybe at some other point in time, we still have to further, have another conversation or not, or it might be doing what we thought it would do, so.
And we're open to that.
Okay. Any additional questions? If not, I would seek a motion.
Madam Mayor, I would move for the approval of Resolution 2019-96.
Second.
Motion on the floor from Doc Jones with a second from Ms. Mayor Pro Tem Bennett, approving Resolution 2019-96. All in favor, vote yes. Opposed, no. And the resolution passes unanimously.
thank you.
Moving on to item 2, resolution number 2019-97. Resolution approving the 2020 Windsor Downtown Development Authority budget, making annual appropriations for the Windsor Downtown Development Authority for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and fixing the mill levy for the Windsor DDA district for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020. Legislative action, and we have Matt Ashby, the Windsor DDA Executive Director, with us this evening to give presentation. So, Mr. Ashby.
Madam Mayor, Town Board, thank you for the opportunity. For the 2020 budget, we are anticipating $1,032,000 worth of funds available. That includes rollover from this year. The DDA did conduct a work session on September 17th to discuss the projects that had been accomplished over the current year, as well as looking forward to objectives for the following year. That helped us to set our initial budget, which was reviewed with this board in a joint work session with the DDA board on October 21st. The DDA then subsequently adopted the budget on November 20th. That does include fixing the mill levy at 5 mills for the DDA district. Key expenditures that we'll be looking at next year include $300,000 in support of the backlot project. That would be for public infrastructure associated with that project, and we would anticipate additional discussions with the DDA board as well as the town board as that project becomes a reality. An additional $100,000 has been allocated towards the alley design for the 400 block, of which the grant from the Department of Local Affairs was mentioned as well. That is a $1 million grant in support of that infrastructure element. We also have allocated $120,000 for the facade improvement program, and that is offering assistance to property owners as they work to improve their their properties in downtown. And this year, we will be rolling out $10,000 of that, 120 will be allocated towards a small facade improvement program, which will be somewhat more accessible to individual building and business owners that may not have as large of a project but still would like to invest in their properties. We will also be pursuing several additional grants as well through the Main Street program, which has benefited the community in the past year to the tune of about $42,000 in grants and services. So certainly receiving a lot of benefit from that state program, as well as looking to wrap up our wayfinding plan after some difficulties with a contractor and looking to roll out some implementation on that project as well. So the total expenditures would be $959,250, with a remainder of $72,000 that is unbudgeted or allocated for remaining at the end of the year. I do want to make one note that during our work session, there were some questions raised about the bottom line as far as a number that had been included but was not reflected in the overall expenses. We did work with Dean Moyer to identify what that reflected. What that was a purchase price of a property that was in conjunction with the town, where the money was deposited into the DDA budget. I had not allocated that going out the door, and so we did reflect that in the most recent adopted budget. So that has been clarified. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, any questions, Dr. Jones?
Yeah, Matt, can you elaborate a little bit more on the back lot, the 300,000, maybe a little more specifically what that might?
Yeah, certainly. We wanted to make sure that we were prepared as far as the DDA for any investment that might be made in that area. And so rather than getting through the budget and then having to reallocate funds in support of improvements or any agreement that our joint bodies might make together regarding the backlot, we have identified funds that we would allocate towards that should an agreement be established.
Okay, and the 65,000 for parking, would that be in the 500 block, the Birch property, or?
That's
was
correct.
The Birch property?
We are working towards demolition of the existing buildings on 512 Ash, as well as repaving that in transitional parking strategy for that location.
Has the demolition been worked into the budget?
Demolition, I believe, is in this year's budget. However, with the time ticking, we may not get it done this calendar year, but that would roll forward into next calendar year if it's not accomplished.
Okay, and then you had 10,000 for elections. What does that in?
Yes, so the DDA has been exploring the concept of a lodging tax and identifying if that is a strategy that might make sense for the community. It is a strategy that's in place in a number of our surrounding neighbors. And so we did have a initial discussion on what that might look like and how those funds could be used in the future in the community. And so we've identified that as something to work on. Not sure if it'll end up moving forward completely, but we did want to be prepared for that discussion.
So the 10,000 would be to promote, if it came to an election, that would be.
I'm not sure if
promote
we
your
would.
stance on it?
I'm not sure if we would be able to allocate the funds towards promotion. I think it would be more towards the actual cost of holding an election.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last question, and maybe the other board is aware of how this works, but can you explain the difference between the town increment contribution of 3,000, and then the property tax increment of 76,000. How are they different?
Absolutely. So the incremental property tax, which is line 4324, which is 76,505, is the property tax increment.
Right.
So that is the amount of growth that has taken place since the DDA was established in 2011. So that is the amount that property taxes in the district have increased over that time. The town transfer, the 143,460, is the increase in the sales tax that has occurred within the boundaries of the district since 2011. And that was fixed by the memorandum of understanding between the DDA and the town that dedicated the $250,000, which was the base. That's how much sales tax was generated in the district in 2011. And now the additional increment of 143 is the growth.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Sisowski?
Yeah, just to clarify something, Matt, I think when you were speaking, you said something about $1 million grant, am I right?
That's correct.
From,
We have worked with the town to submit, actually the town is the applicant. The DDA assisted in preparing the grant from the Department of Local Affairs through an Energy and Mineral Impact grant to essentially provide us with up to $1 million is what we've requested. Certainly that is up to their decision as to how much they would be willing to provide, but that would be funding towards the alley improvements in the 400 block.
okay, so it's not awarded yet, the amount's unknown. I mean, it doesn't appear in your revenues.
That's correct,
Yeah.
yes.
But there may be an adjustment.
And certainly, working with the town staff, we would anticipate if that is awarded, there will be a match that we will need to establish as far as where does that funding come from. Probably established through an MOU or some other agreement with the town to identify how that's worked out. But the main thing that we were dealing with was a deadline of getting that grant submitted. And so a few additional details to work out.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any additional questions? Okay. If not, is there a motion for this resolution?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 2019-97.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor from Mayor Pro Tem Bennett and a second from
Paul?
He can have it.
Doc Jones?
No, Mr. Kozlowski.
Oh, for Mr. Sisowski. For resolution 2019-97. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 3, ordinance number 2019-1599. An ordinance fixing the compensation of the municipal court judge and municipal court clerk for the town of Windsor in compliance with sections 13-10-107 and 13-10-108 Colorado Revised Statute and section 2-4-90 of the Windsor Municipal Code. First reading, legislative action, and we have our esteemed town attorney, Mr. McCarter, giving presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is first reading of an ordinance we do every year at this time. It follows approval of the budget, and what it does is satisfy the statutory requirement that by ordinance we establish compensation of the municipal judge and the municipal court clerk's office. So all we do in this ordinance is by reference to the approved budget line items for those offices, incorporate and approve them by ordinance. This is first reading, simple majority required. I'm here to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. McCarter? Mr. Reitmeyer?
I noticed in the language of the ordinance that there's not dollar figures in there. Does that just relate back to what it had been previously? Is that? Or like the municipal judge, for instance, et cetera?
So it incorporates what was approved in the budget. So the dollar numbers, rather than repeat them, we just refer by reference to them and incorporate them by reference.
Okay, thank you.
Anything additional? Okay, if not, is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 2019-1599.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer and a second from Mr. Wilson approving ordinance 2019-1599. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the ordinance passes unanimously on first reading. Moving on to item 4, a public hearing, a conditional use grant, Central Oceans CUG, to allow a temporary use not specifically included as a use by right in any zone district. Great Western Industrial Park, 7th filing, Lot 5, Ben Goldwasser, Central Oceans, the applicant, and Mark Saval, Redland, the applicant's representative. It's quasi judicial. Mr. Hornback will give a presentation. I would seek a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor with a second. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. Public hearing is now open. Mr. Hornbeck. Mr. Sosowski?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Madam Mayor, and for the record, I'd like to point out that in my capacity as Town Board Liaison to the Planning Commission, I was present at the Planning Commission meeting during which this matter was previously presented. I wish to state my participation in the Planning Commission proceeding has in no way influenced me in my capacity as a Town Board member this evening. I'll make my decision and cast my vote this evening based solely on the evidence presented during this public hearing. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, please proceed, Mr. Hornbeck.
Thank you, Mayor and Town Board. This conditional use grant has been reviewed, has been reviewed in accordance with Article 7 of Chapter 16 of the Municipal Code. The subject property is located at the southern end of Great Western Drive, approximately 1 mile south of Eastman Park Drive. The property is zoned heavy industrial and is generally surrounded by likewise zoned properties. The subject request is for a use not identified in the municipal code, which is a temporary shipping container storage facility. The proposed use will occupy approximately 25 acres on Lot 5 of Great Western Industrial Park, 7th filing. The majority of the containers are 40 feet long, approximately 8 feet wide, and 9.5 feet tall. The proposal is for storage of approximately 2,700 containers that contain solar equipment. The containers will arrive and depart the site by truck. They are proposed to be stacked up to 3 high on the site for a total height of approximately 29 feet. And this is the representation of the type of containers that will be stored, the stacking and equipment that's used for the containers. The containers are expected to arrive during the first 2 quarters of next year on the site, and then would be delivered to their final destinations beginning in the 4th quarter of 2020 through the year 2023. The site would be enclosed with a chain link fence with screening provided by slats, topped with barbed wire and monitored by security cameras. There is landscaping proposed along the Great Western Drive frontage, which is on the left side, west of the drawing. Additionally, landscaping provided around the detention pond in the south part of the site, as well as some buffering around this farmhouse to the east. There are standards listed in the municipal code for, run through these photo simulations provided by the applicant first. This first slide shows the view from Eastman Park Drive looking south towards the site. The containers are off in the distance. They're shown as red in this rendering just to make them more visible. In reality, they would be a darker grays and less visible colors, which are shown in this picture. And then this is the view from Great Western Drive approaching the facility. And then an aerial view showing the containers on site. The municipal code does list factors to be evaluated for a conditional use grant, so I'm going to run through those as well as the analysis with those. So number one, the character and quality of the area in which the use will be located. The subject property is within the Great Western Industrial Park and is generally surrounded by undeveloped or agricultural land. There is one industrial business to the west, as well as 2 residential homes to the east. Future industrial development is possible to the north, east, and west. To the south is the Poudre River and floodplain. The Poudre River Trail is also to the south, approximately a quarter mile. And the future Crossroads Boulevard extension would also pass just to the south of the proposed development. The two farmhouses or two residential uses. One is under separate ownership, located immediately east of the property. And again, screening is proposed with landscaping. The remainder of the surrounding properties are heavy industrial within the town of Windsor. The second criteria is the physical appearance of the use. Again, the use will be surrounded by a fence with screening provided by landscaping and slats, which would provide some level of screening of the ground level views. However, given the height of up to 29 feet, the use would be visible from surrounding areas. Criteria 3, appropriate location of the building or buildings on the lot. In this case, there is no building proposed. At one time, a temporary warehouse facility was proposed. That's been eliminated from the proposal. Number 4, adequate provision of parking, loading, and circulation facilities. There's a minimal parking need due to the fact that there's only 2 part-time employees on the site with no visitors or customers on site. There will be considerable, the 2,700 containers would be arriving on site, which I'll cover that in more detail later. And there's a Greeley water line crossing the site, which would need to be, the terms of their water line easement and will need to be respected, and including appropriate crossing conditions of that water line. Number 5 is the potential effect of the use upon off-site vehicle or pedestrian traffic circulation. During the first 6 months of operation, up to 15 trucks per day will be delivering containers, making for approximately 30 round trips. As containers are shipped off-site, the applicant anticipates 3 to 5 trucks per day picking up containers for delivery, so up to 10 trips per day. So overall, relatively minor increase in traffic due to those operations. Number 6 is the potential effect of the use on storm drainage. The applicant will be required to comply with all grading, erosion, sediment control requirements within the town, and that will be addressed in the site plan. Number 7 is adequacy of planting screens where necessary. Landscaping is proposed along the Great Western Drive frontage, around the detention pond, and adjacent to the house to the east. Again, due to the height of the containers, the screening or the landscaping will provide fairly limited screening. Number 8 is the provision of controls to avoid hazardous conditions, and no such conditions have been identified with this application. The final standard is the general compatibility of the proposed use. In this case, the use is compatible with the heavy industrial zoning and nature of the area. Landscape buffering is proposed adjacent to the adjoining residential farmhouse to increase the compatibility. The notification for this public hearing was completed in accordance with the municipal code. At their December 4th, 2019 meeting, the Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation of approval to Town Board with the following conditions. Number one, the conditional use grant shall initially be valid for a period of 2 years. Prior to completion of the 2-year term, the applicant may request a 1-year extension to be reviewed by the planning director. If the director determines the use is in conformance with all conditions contained herein and all other applicable code requirements, a 1-year extension shall be granted administratively by staff. If the director determines the use is not in conformance with the conditions contained herein or other applicable code requirements, the extension request shall be referred to Planning Commission and Town Board in accordance with CUD procedures per the municipal code. A second 1-year extension may be granted following the same procedure. No further extensions shall be considered. Line easement traversing the site. Number 6, the applicant shall work to establish a truck route that avoids Main Street. And finally, number 7, all outstanding Planning Commission and staff comments shall be addressed. Staff requests the following be entered into the record: the application and supplemental materials, staff memo, supporting documents, testimony from the public hearing, and the recommendation. We want to note the applicant and representatives are present as well. And again, the nine review criteria for the conditional use are before you as well. That's all I have for you.
Okay. Did the applicant wish to make any statement at this time?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Madam Mayor and Town Board, my name is Adam Berg with Central Oceans, 1139 St. Paul Street, Denver, Colorado. I do want to take my time here to thank the Planning Commission and the Associated Town staff on getting us on the agenda this evening. So we definitely appreciate everyone's hard work to allow us to be here in this timeline. I just wanted to reiterate that we are a foreign trade zone storage container yard for the temporary storage of solar components and solar modules. And we do have myself, along with our COO Thompson Silvers, our land engineer from Redland, and the owner representative with Bro, Dean, is here as well. So we are here to answer any questions that anybody has.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the town board? Dr. Jones?
And I don't know if to direct this to you, Adam, or to Paul, but there, on one of those site plans, there shows an expansion area in the north, I guess the northwest corner of the property. Is that something, are you reserving that in case you have more containers than you expect, or is that
No, it's
going to
not
be
for,
something separate?
It's not for additional containers. It would be an additional land area in the event that we needed to use it for the overflow with the step down of the stacking height that we agreed to go from the higher stack to the lower stack after the end of that 2-year period. That additional land allows for us to expand into that area to accommodate anything needed to meet that stacking requirement. So it wouldn't add additional containers, it would just shift them slightly north.
Just spread them out.
Spread them out. Only to be utilized if necessary without adding more containers.
Okay, do we know if the city of Greeley is in agreement with what you've set aside for access to that water line? I think 50 feet, is that right?
I might refer to Mark on this question.
Good evening. My name is Mark Saval. I'm with Redland, a civil engineering firm, 1500 West Canal Court, Littleton, Colorado. We had submitted, part of our submittal to the town included a referral to City of Greeley. Greeley Utility Department gave us comments, and they're the ones that established that as long as we maintain the containers being 25 feet away from their 2 water lines that cross through the site, that would be acceptable to them. And so we've adjusted the site plan to meet that requirement. The city of Greeley has one easement that runs through the property that pretty much follows the southern water line, and the width of that easement is not defined in the easement agreement, but Greeley is determining that that easement, that even though it's undefined in the agreement, is roughly 50 feet. And then the second line, there is no recorded easement for it. It's a prescribed easement since it's been there for 50 years or so. And so they're again saying 50 feet easement centered on the water line. So that's where that 25 feet has come from, and we've accommodated that.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem Bennett?
Yeah, I had two. I had one question about the water line, so I appreciate you asking that. Just a 2-year term and then 1-year extension and the 29 feet limit on the height. What's the process for monitoring that?
The process, I guess, would just be field checks. You know, they've indicated it. They need the 3-high stacking to accommodate the number of containers. They've also agreed to try and get it down to 2-high within that time frame to reduce the visual impact of it. I think it would be fairly obvious if they're stacked 3-high, then we would follow up accordingly.
If I can, Mr. Bennett, so we had a lot of discussion about the height of the containers and when they were going to pare that down. Our CUG by practice has been 2 years, but it could be longer.
Right.
And so that was kind of in discussions with the applicant representative that in order for this group to make this kind of investment, they need to know that they can be there more than 2 years. They wanted some kind of guarantee.
Sure.
And so this was kind of the compromise language that since staff's biggest concern was that we just don't have this height for a long time,
Right.
that if they can meet these other conditions, that they would automatically have that additional year. And like Mr. Hornbeck said, it's pretty easy to measure that, or the container's 3-high or not, so.
Yeah.
And they do have a fail-safe plan too. If they can't meet that deadline, they do have an expansion area, which Dr. Jones hit on, so they do have that additional ability to hit that requirement if they need to.
Mr. Soslowski?
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Mr. Brown?
Dean Brown, 400 Pelican Cove, Windsor. What we've done, what we agreed to do also as the landowner, is include all the conditions of the CUG in the lease. So we'll be watching that, making sure that they comply. Our lease is 2 years, running concurrent with the CUG.
Thank you. Mr. Soslowski?
Thank you, Mayor. Just looking at the standards on the character, quality of the area, I'm just curious, and because I don't recall, and I think, Paul, probably for you, what is the heavy industrial building height limit under our current ordinance?
The maximum is 75 feet.
So we're restricting them to 29 feet because, I mean, they could put a building there.
Correct, they could put a building 75 feet tall. They can just, temporary storage of containers is not allowed use, so it's required to go through this process for the conditional use. So there could be additional requirements put on it through that process.
I guess what seems odd is they could have built a permanent building there that was 75 feet high. Here they're asking to do something much lower than that for only 3 years. And so I'm curious what the rationale was to say that we couldn't allow them to go to 4 high, when instead they could have built a building 75 feet high and stored them inside.
I guess the visual impact of a building versus containers, you could argue is different with, and we did not require the 4 high versus 3 high necessarily. It's something we tried to work out with them to come to an agreement of how to minimize the impact.
And I notice on the map there was one home really that's right to the east, really almost incorporated into that corner. Did that homeowner have provide feedback on their view of what it would?
There were 2 homeowners that attended the planning commission meeting. I wasn't clear exactly which homeowner was with which property, but I believe one of them was there, and they expressed some concern, but they weren't outright opposed to the project either.
I guess I'm still struggling, I guess, why we've imposed the height limit on something that's in fact temporary. And I'm curious what inconvenience that might cause the applicant. I guess related to, well, the neighbor we don't know. Regarding the buildings, standard number 3, location of the buildings on the lot, you referenced there was going to be some sort of structure, and one of the pictures in your deck has a picture of a sort of A-frame kind of temporary building, I think. Was it the applicant that didn't want that building anymore, or was it our request that they not build it?
No, they removed it from the proposal.
I'm sorry?
The applicant removed the building from the proposal.
Was it because they needed additional space since we would only let them go 3 high?
I defer to them on that question.
Okay. Would you like the applicant to come forward, Mr. Sosowski, and answer?
Yes, I guess.
Or if they have an
I'm
answer
curious.
to either of those questions you are proposing? You want to address the height question first, and then?
Well, I'll go reverse of that.
Okay.
We've removed the building for multiple reasons. I mean, space was one of them, but there were several other factors that caused us to want to go ahead and remove that building as well for other alternatives. So was there a follow-up question on height?
Yeah, well, it was a comment, I guess, where you could have built the building 75 feet high, but is the restriction to 29 feet 3 high a logistics issue for you, or something you can manage with as opposed to 4 high?
Can I confer real quick?
Yeah.
We've worked to accommodate the height mutually with the Planning Commission to make a situation that worked for both parties.
Okay. And sorry, Mayor, a couple just comments.
Okay.
Did you have something to add? Okay, why don't you come up and answer?
I think to add to that, as the landowner, we struggled with a height of 4. And we wanted to protect the area and make sure we weren't doing something that would be in the view corridor. We were really struggling with 4. And again, the applicant, the Planning Commission, the Planning Department all worked together and ended up with this height of 3. So I think it worked out well.
So what is being presented before us this evening is an amicable resolve at the end of, okay.
Thank you. And I guess I'm not sure if this is a question. Item 5 on our requirements goes to potential traffic congestion. And I don't know, I saw a comment on here about Eastman Drive being able to accommodate the additional traffic. It looks like it's a lot of trucks. And so is there a way for us to also prevent them from being on Main Street since it's already congested?
So that was a condition that Planning Commission added to the recommended staff conditions, that they do stay off of Main Street.
Okay.
I believe the applicant was agreeable to work with the staff to determine a truck route for them.
Right, okay, thank you, Paul. One last comment, and that really, item 9, which really may be an issue more for the property owner, of whether we have any kind of restoration requirement at the end of the 2 or 3 years, whenever they vacate the property. And perhaps it's not a town issue as much as it is the landlord.
They'd be required to, maintain the property free of weeds, things like that. But beyond that, there's nothing of that nature.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Any additional questions from town board? Okay. If not, this is the public hearing portion. Mr. McCarter?
Madam Mayor, just for the record, would you have any problem or any objection to requesting the applicant to confirm that the conditions that are included in Planning Commission recommendations and also staff recommendations are acceptable to the applicant?
Okay.
I just want to make certain if there are any objections to the conditions that they're on the record here today.
Okay.
the conditions will work for us as the applicant.
Okay?
Thank you.
We have what we need, okay? So given that, then this is the public hearing portion. If anybody wished to address the board on this agenda item, this would be the time to move forward. Okay, seeing none and no additional questions from town board, I would seek a motion to close public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion on the floor and a second to close public hearing. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. Public hearing is now closed. Moving on to item 5, a conditional use grant, Central Ocean CUG, to allow a temporary use not specifically included as a use by right in any zone district. Great Western Industrial Park, 7th lot filing, Lot 5, Ben Goldwasser, Central Oceans the applicant, and Mark Saval, Redland applicant's representative. Quasi judicial, Mr. Hornbeck, do you have anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. Anything further from any of the town board members? Mayor Pro Tem Bennett.
Madam Mayor, when I asked a question about the 2-year term and how we follow from that, I wasn't so concerned about the height as it was just what's our process when we do conditional use grants, how do we follow up on the conditions? That was my intent. Mr. Solowski brought up a good point. I just want to make a comment that when we're in industrial property, I'm more open to, whatever height makes sense for the applicant. I think it was good to hear from the landowner, though, that it was a condition that you had placed on there, a concern that you had. But I just want to say that I think you're making a good point. If it's industrial zone for heavy industry, I think there's more latitude. Just a comment.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Sosowski?
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Bennett, I just echoed the same thing. As I looked through the deck, I was puzzled with, it seemed to be a height restriction when in fact they could build a 75-foot building, and it's an industrial area. And the one neighbor that lived there apparently at least wasn't vocal enough to clearly state on record that they objected. So I'm a bit surprised, and I hope that we are sufficiently accommodating to the applicant for their intended use, because I think it's a good reason. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Seeing none, then is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the conditional use grant for Central Oceans.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer with a second from Doc Jones approving the conditional use grant. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the conditional use grant is approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, resolution number 2019-98. A resolution establishing rates for the Town of Windsor water service customers and authorizing the implementation of such rates. Legislative action, Ms. Humphreys will give us presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Town Board. Annually, staff evaluates the water rates during the budgeting process. For the last 2 years, we have worked with Stantec to develop a rate model to evaluate all the variables required to provide a secure and resilient water supply to our residents and businesses. At the November 18th, 2019 special board meeting, we presented with Stantec a recommendation to increase water rates of a total of 7.5%. This is to fund maintenance, operations and maintenance of the current system, as well as capital improvements required to continue securing our water supply for the future. The resolution reflecting those rates and the chart have been included in your packet. The financial impact, if approved, the monthly water rate would be an increase of 7.5% effective February 1st, 2020, and reflected on the March 1st, 2020 utility bills. Staff is recommending the 7.5% increase effective February 1st. Also, we did present to Water and Sewer Board prior to your special meeting on the 18th, and they did recommend the same increase as well. Take any questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, Doc Jones?
Yeah, I would like to get these funds squared away. The new growth basin impact fee, that's a one-time fee.
That's for the next item, sir.
Pardon me?
That is for the next item, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But thank you for preempting.
I apologize.
Okay. Any questions Mayor Pro Tem Bennett.
A comment, I do appreciate that the staff and the Water and Sewer Board is reviewing the data annually. And I'd like to point out that, yes, we do talk about an increase for next year, but it's less than we had anticipated a year ago. So I appreciate the diligence in reviewing data and keeping things as close to reasonable for us consumers as possible.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 2019-98.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor from Mr. Ennemeyer and a second tied with Mayor Pro Tem Bennett and Doc Jones to approve Resolution 2019-98. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the resolution passes unanimously. Moving on to item 7, ordinance number 2019-1600. An ordinance repealing, amending, and readopting portions of Article 3 of Chapter 13 of the Windsor Municipal Code with respect to stormwater basin fees imposed by the town's stormwater drainage utility enterprise. Legislative action, and Ms. Humphries will continue with presentation.
So our storm drainage fund is by classification a self-funding enterprise, and revenues in general must be adequate to pay for both operating and capital expenditures. At our special meeting on November 18th, our stormwater manager presented to you some additional increase in capital and operation requirements planned for 2020 and presented some proposed rate increases. I'm going to go over those real quick. We are proposing 3 pieces of the 4, out of the 4, of our rate model, let me try that again, to increase. The first one is the monthly user basin, the portion of that rate model equation that funds future development. We're requesting an increase of 1.8%. In the same user fee, the basin user fee, the portion that funds O&M, we're requesting an increase of 15% to the multiplier. We're also requesting on the new growth basin impact fee to be increased 1.8%. So this increase meets the current minimum review standard under section 13-3-80A of the town's charter of a 2-year moving average of the Colorado Construction Index. This request increases the monthly basin user fee. The increase, will generate $23,837 for the O&M funding and $10,298 for capital funding in 2020. The requested increase to the new growth basin impact fee will generate between $17,000 and $28,000. Staff is recommending the board approve and adopt the increase to both the monthly basin user fee and the new growth basin impact fee. Again, on November 13th, this same information was presented to the Water and Sewer Board, and they too recommend this increase. Questions?
Okay, did you have a question now on this one, Dr.
No,
Jones?
no. The new growth basin, that's a one-time fee, correct? When a new development comes in?
That is correct.
Okay. And that we set up an enterprise fund for that?
It's all part of the stormwater fund, yes.
It's part of
all part of the
fund?
the whole enterprise fund.
Oh, okay. So it's not a separate fund?
No, sir.
Okay. So it would be, we don't consider that like a road impact fee, that down the road, if we need to put in a big drainage pipeline or basin to serve a bigger area?
I'm going to have our finance director.
We tap into that fund? No?
Yeah. Similar to the road impact fee, we keep that in its entirety in the capital improvement fund, but we keep track of it separately for when projects like that come up. This fee work in the drainage fund works that same way. It's accounted for within the storm drainage fund, but we also keep track of it on an Excel sub spreadsheet to address needs like that.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. Any additional questions from Ms. Humphries? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion for this ordinance?
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 2019-1600.
Second.
Motion on the floor for Mr. Redemeyer and a second for Mr. Wilson, approving ordinance 2019-1600. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the ordinance passes unanimously. Moving on to item 8, finance report for October 2019. Mr. Moyer.
Yes, Madam Mayor, in your packet is the October 2019 financial report. I know that you have an executive session, so I'll try and be brief, but I do have a couple items of interest to point out. Being the end of October, the benchmark for our revenue and expenditures is 83.3%. Our taxes easily, all the property sales and use tax cleared those marks easily. In fact, the construction use tax is higher than we budgeted for this year, and driven by the enormous number of building permits that we're issuing. One thing of interest is the year-to-date collections through October of 2019. I don't think it's reflected in your report. I noticed it in our records when I was putting this together. Through 2019, the end of October 2019, for the sales tax, we have collected as much as we did for the entire year of 2018. And we still have 2 months to go. So that was my first point of interest. And then the next thing on page number 4 in the report, it's comparing our geographic locations from 2018 to 2019. The one thing of interest there is if you look at the no location, the first set of bar graphs there, the no location has gone up considerably over last year due to the voluntary compliance of the internet sales. I mentioned that earlier this year. The other thing on page number 5, the pie chart, I'm always up here saying that, gas, groceries, and convenience is easily our largest segment. But if you look at, I think it's the green piece of the pie, retail and retail services is very close to the groceries. So I take that as a good sign, kind of further expanding our sales tax base. The last thing is the expenditures. I mentioned about an 83% benchmark. O&M is at 72.43, capital at 34.78, and total is 55.33. So we are in good shape there. Now, I will say, excuse me, I will say that we got bills for the roundabouts today, 2 of them for 1.1 and 1.2 million. So we're planning to pay those here in December to clear the decks on that. So the capital by the end of the year is going to be much closer to what the percentage of the budget is. So, we're just wrapping up stuff we did during the year. So that being said, this being our last meeting of the year, I don't want to be the one that holds us up, but I will answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Moyer? Mr. Sosowski?
Just one, thank you, Mayor. You noted the increased pie chart for sales tax, but again, I'm guessing that's because of the no location. Is that in that?
Yeah, I think that's what's driving the retail. It's not so much as, well, it's a combination, I think, we have a lot of new bricks and mortar buildings, but I think what's really driving it is a combination of the new bricks and mortar and the no location, the voluntary internet compliance licenses.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Moyer? Okay, well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on then to communications. Communications from our town attorney.
Nothing further from me, thank you.
Communications from town staff. Mr. Ballstead? Ms. Humphries? Mr. Thornhill? Chief?
No, ma'am.
Communications from town manager.
Yes, Your Honor, just a couple notes, and they were in the future meetings agenda, but we didn't have a chance to cover those. So I just wanted to remind the board that this Friday, we have our end of the year banquet at the Big Red Barn. So quite a few of you have RSVP'd to that, so looking forward to seeing you there. And then secondly, we also have, I believe on the 19th, which is a week from this Thursday, is our fourth quarter regional elected official meeting for Larimer County, and that'll be at the Budweiser Event Center from 5:30 to 9:30. So I look forward to seeing you guys all there, and have a Merry Christmas.
Okay. Communications from town board. I have, if nobody else has it, okay, I have two items. One, I have upcoming coffee with the mayor on December 21st at Senior Jalapeno. We are going to be talking our budget and end of year finances. Mr. Moyer, are you joining me for that, or?
Yes, both Carl and myself.
Okay, so we will have esteemed guests from the finance department, our department head and his right-hand man joining us. But I also wanted to do a clarification, because there was an article in the newspaper, and since we don't have an ongoing reporter anymore, I think it's something that we need to make note of. So there was an article that was focused on Hunter Rivera, and there was a statement that was made in there that related to our Economic Development Office, where basically the statement said that when it comes through the town motions for attracting business, they don't give economic incentives, don't give tax breaks. That could not be farther from the truth, and I would encourage anybody who read that statement to please take a look at the recent article the Greeley Tribune wrote on December 3rd. Windsor is open for business. Our economic development person in charge, Stacy Miller, gave the reporter the real facts about what we do, and that Windsor is certainly very pro-business and open for business. So I just wanted to make sure we have that clarification on the record this evening. With that, I too would like to wish everybody in our community happy holidays, however it is that you celebrate. Be safe out there, be good, and remember to continue to be kind to one another during this season of good tidings. And with that, we will move into executive session, and I would seek a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we move into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6402, subsection 4E and I, for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with respect to our cable television franchise. There will be a second executive session as well pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402, subsection 4NB, to confer with the town attorney for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions concerning the town's cable television franchise with Comcast of Colorado, LLC.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Redemeyer and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Bennett to move into executive session. All in favor signify with yes, opposed no. And after about a 5-minute recess, we will move immediately into our executive session this evening. Thank you.